Welcome to the 6th annual Blue Ridge Bookfest. My name is Rita Van Zant, and I'm here today to talk with an author that many of you know about because you've read her books before. I'm real pleased to introduce to you Cassandra King. Welcome to Hendersonville.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Have you been through the area before?
Yes,
in this
I
area?
have. Yes.
So you're familiar with us.
I am. I love Hendersonville
Well,
area.
good for you. Your book that we're going to be talking about, Moonrise, takes place in Highlands, North Carolina. And I was thinking, I'm not sure I've read any other book that's where the setting takes place.
I wasn't sure either. I actually looked around to see if there were other works of fiction set in Highlands. I had a friend that wrote a book in the Cashiers and set it in the Cashiers area. Mm-hmm. So I looked back at his book to see if he had talked about Highlands. But I'm sure there are some. I just didn't locate them.
I know you're an Alabama girl. Born and
yes,
bred, right?
Yeah.
Does it help that you're familiar with the location to write a book, or do you think you could just do research and tell about Highlands?
I don't think I could. I certainly can appreciate authors that, are able to do that. But for me, I have to sort of soak in the ambience of a place. And it gives me a great excuse as well, because a lot of my books are set on the Gulf Coast and Florida Panhandle, and then this book in Highlands. And so, I mean, if I'm doing research, I've got to be there.
That sounds good. Now, you wrote 4 books, and all of them have a setting in Alabama, small town?
The Sunday Wife was set in Florida, small town, yes. But in that area.
You like the small town feel?
I do.
And the Florida small town was more southern and not so much big city.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's the North Florida. I was raised right across the Florida line. My mother's from Florida, and her people, all my grandparents, aunts, and uncles, and so forth were in the Panhandle area of Florida. So it was my native territory.
You have 4 books with really intriguing titles, and I was wondering which one of them most describe you. So I'm going to go through the 4 titles, and you figure out if one of them describes you better than the other. Making Waves, Sunday Wife, Queen of Broken Hearts, or The Same Sweet Girls.
Well, since I am the same sweet girl I've always been, I guess it would have to be The Same Sweet Girls.
I think that would be the one I would hope I would pick, but I kind of like the Making Waves one too, and I have a feeling you have that in you as well.
Oh yeah, I've made quite a few waves in my day.
The book that we're going to talk about, that we're going to focus on, is Moonrise, which is, you really deviated from your titles. You've named a location instead of a personality or whatever. Right,
yeah. There's a lot about Moonrise that was a different book to me. The setting is different, the atmosphere of the book. I've never done, kind of played around with the Gothic element in fiction before, but I really like doing that. There's a suggestion of the supernatural. There's in keeping with the Gothic element, I guess there's an old mysterious house. There's a bit of a mystery. There's a mysterious death, or a death that, there's some mysterious circumstances surrounding and so forth. So it's different in a lot of ways for me.
A Southern American Gothic novel is the way I would describe it, the book, but was there a genre that you could look up in a book and literature? You used to be a literature teacher.
Right.
Could you say these are the 4 steps that would make it a Southern Gothic book?
Not really, and I guess you could, because certainly if you're teaching the Southern Gothic literature, you would have, I would have put that right on the board for my students. Here's your list, you'll be tested on it. And the suggestion of the supernatural, the foreboding, the atmosphere of suspense and this sort of stuff would all be elements. But I don't think I set out to do it that way. The story always comes first for me.
And this has been called your finest book to date. Do you think it was because you went in a little bit different direction? The story went off in a different direction?
I'm not sure. I've had, several reviewers who have kind of surprised me with that, because I had it was a bit different for me to write something with a bit of a mystery to it, and I hadn't done this enough that I wasn't sure that the reader would know from the first page what the mystery was. And so I did have, a lot of reviewers say, well, you handled that. And maybe that was the plotting of it.
This is an homage to Rebecca, but not a parallel of the story.
That's correct.
Could you explain that?
Yes. I did not set out to do an homage to the Daphne du Maurier's classic Rebecca. It came about, though. Pardon me. It also came about out of the story, because I had played around with the idea of a story where I had a woman that was coming into an unknown situation for her. She was the new wife. Would she be accepted? And there was a suggestion of, well, something maybe happened to the former wife that, was rather mysterious and so forth. And when I was actually just working on this idea of plotting the book and so forth, I happened to pick up a copy of Rebecca for rereading. Mm-hmm. And once I got into it, I thought, oh yes, this is where I was going with my book. And when I first told my publisher that I was kind of taking that bend with the plot, she said, "Oh, a retelling of Rebecca, that's wonderful." And I said, "No, it's not at all. Maybe if I had thought about it, I would have set out to do." Right. But no, I stuck with what I was already doing, but I did have some of the elements.
You have 3 different narrators, first-person narrators, yes. But you have a plethora of characters that we follow all along. I really like the relationship between Helen, who is one of your narrators, and Emmett, who is her new husband. Yes. Both second marriage. Yeah. Because I think second marriages are different. The telling of them is a different way. And sometimes when you would think, oh, well, now they're going to fuss, yeah. Instead one would bow out and leave the room or something. And right. I wonder, I don't know enough about all of this, but I wonder if in second marriages you try harder not to do the things you did before. And I sense that in the book mm-hmm. between them.
Yes.
Was that intentional?
Yes, it was. And I saw both of these characters as having a chance to had an unhappy experience before. He had recently lost his wife, and this was a beloved wife. She died, and so it wasn't like the marriage came apart or mm-hmm. anything. And he had gone through a very difficult period of mourning for her, and the woman that he falls in love with afterwards, Helen, had a very difficult time as well in a former marriage that went all wrong. So I saw this as an opportunity in fiction to kind of explore the relationship between 2 people who are trying to start their lives over. They're part of their past, because we all are, but they also wanted to start anew.
And they knew their love was strong, but then you blend in all of the people that knew Emmett before. Yes. When Helen comes up to Highlands, and all of a sudden she's not just having to settle on a marriage, but she's got to start in adopting all of these people into her life. Yes. And it's not easy for the second wife to walk in.
It's not easy for any of us in that situation, and a lot of folks have been in situations like this before. I certainly hope they don't encounter some of the difficulties that Helen did in the book. But I've explored, it's been almost a theme throughout my work of the life-changing qualities of friendship, the power of friendship. And in this book, I think I was looking a little bit more at the darker side of friendship. It doesn't always work out. Just like when we're young and in love and, you know, we think we're going to live happily ever after, and that doesn't always work out. A friendship can take a bad turn as well.
Now, the two other narrators that you have helps explain the environment, because Tansy it has lived in the Highlands area on and off all of her life,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And loves it, but she represents, what does she represent in the book?
I wanted to have at least one representative from the wife, the wife who has died and has been replaced by this young woman. Her circle of friends who are not accepting to this new wife. I thought it only fair to give their point of view if we were going to, you know, see her side and see why they don't accept her, and so forth. So Tansy, yes, represents the lifelong friends of the former wife and their reluctance to accept. She's a socialite too, and there's a bit of snootiness here. This new wife she's like in Rebecca, in the book Rebecca. She just doesn't live up.
She's not one of us.
She's not one of us. She
yes.
doesn't live up to the former wife. She's not as beautiful. She's not as poised. She doesn't come from the same background. We just decide we don't like her, you know.
And in a way, the reader kind of starts cheering for her because of that, don't you think?
I think so.
We kind of try to balance the scale
yes.
a little bit.
Yeah.
The other woman who is a narrator is Willa, and she's local, but in a different way.
Yes, I really wanted to, when I decided I wanted to set a book in the Highlands area, I had not dealt with the mountain South. The coastal South had been, you know, my territory, literary territory before, and so I began to observe and to read about the local people, because Highlands and other places become known as more tourist attractions, and the influx of the summer people. And there are a lot of places like that, but you have the locals there as well, and you know how they relate to the summer people, how their lives intermingle, really interested me. So I have a local mountain woman who is a housekeeper for the family, and so she gives us a unique perspective.
And you wrote in dialect.
Yes,
Southern Scottish dialect, am I right?
Well, somewhat Scottish, yes. Yeah, that was her background. I didn't really intend, you know, for her to be, have a strong Scottish brogue or anything, but I think there is a lot of that. There's been a lot of linguistic studies that so many of the mountain speech patterns and so forth came right from the Highlands of Scotland.
Absolutely. One of the things you said about Highlands is where people pretend to like one another. And I suppose that could be said about a lot of our communities in the mountains, where you have people coming in from the outside and local people.
Yes.
They have to figure out a way to get along.
They have to figure out a way. They're thrown together for this, certainly the summer months, we think of it mainly, but then we have the seasonal, you know, the leaf turning season, and the spring, as it is now, when you have folks come up to see the dogwood in bloom and so forth. So, yeah, there's a lot of intermingling there that folks have to figure out their relationship to each other.
Since the book has come out, have you been back to Highlands?
Yes, I...
Can you go home again?
Yes, I certainly hope so.
So you haven't gotten any feedback from somebody going, well, I don't recognize that that's the Highlands I know, or anything like that?
No, I've gotten, so far, I've gotten the opposite. You know, if I said, oh,
yeah,
I know exactly, I know those people, or...
Another quote you had was, summer folks love nothing better than minding each other's business.
Yeah, this was from the perspective of the mountain one, because I thought it was really interesting to look at how she would come from such a different you know, background than them, and she's been focused on working and survival in a lot of ways.
You were talking about one of the actual characters, I kind of think, in the book with Moonrise is there's a night garden, and there's a whole area where I learned about butterflies in ways I had no idea about before. And so you've got to do a lot of research in ways that I'd never even had thought about. And that's one of the nice things about fiction. Even though it's not a nonfiction book, I learned a lot in my reading as well.
Well, one thing I've learned about research is I think you almost have to do more thoroughly for fiction than nonfiction. I think nonfiction people would probably disagree with me about this, but I can't just write about a moon garden if I'm going to have my characters actually in the garden, going through, you know, this gardening process that I've got. Characters in fiction will use the stuff you research.
Right. Well, that
so
makes
you
sense.
Can't just describe it. You've got to really talk about it.
Well, it was wonderful. And again, I'd never thought about growing a moon garden that would actually show up in a prettier way when the moon was striking it. I just think about the daytime thing. So that was good. I want to shift over a little bit. We talked about you were from Lower Alabama.
That's right.
And you have a BA in English and an MFA, and your first book came out of your MFA program, is that right?
That's right, yes.
So you used it in learning how to write, and then took it, and you just keep taking it to a new level then in your writing.
Yes, I guess you could look at it that way, yeah.
With a liberal arts degree, which I also have, I think you have a very similar parallel life to mine. You try to figure out what you can do with it.
Exactly.
After you know you want to have it, that's what your life is all about, and then you go, well, now how am I going to make a living at it? So teaching was an easy step for you to go ahead and take your liberal arts degree?
Right, yeah. I did. I taught in community college in Birmingham and some of the surrounding areas, and really enjoyed teaching that level of student.
The books that you have written since then have complicated characters in them, and I was thinking that I wondered if you, when you sit down to write, you're kind of like Faulkner in that you have a wall that you put all the characters up on, and you try to figure out how they blend. Go through your writing process. How do you do that?
I do. My characters live in my head a long time before they appear on the page. I start forming, getting these ideas, and I do have notebooks for each of my books. I have a notebook, and I'll write. I always start out with everything in pencil, because when I'm playing around with the plot line and the story and so forth, forming my characters, I have an idea, you know, of what I want to name them. Sometimes their names just come to me. I know that Tansy is a Tansy, you know. But occasionally I'll change my mind. You know, I might start out with their names, and then I know once this person become, so it's almost like once I name them, they're real. But then I have to have I've got to make sure I know these characters well enough for the reader to know them. So I can, you know, I'll start doing a biographical sketch.
Like a backstory.
Yeah.
Before the book ever starts.
Before it ever starts, you need to know about your characters. You want to make sure you don't mess up on, you know, their age and some of their life experiences. Then you get into it and wait, that wouldn't work. You know, they couldn't have been there at such and such a time, or oops, and you know. So you have to. I think you have to know an awfully lot about your
Which is
characters.
Definitely different than a nonfiction book where it's set up
already
day
there.
by day by day.
It's already there.
I realized when I was talking with some people last night and you were at the table, people started asking you, is there going to be a sequel to Moonrise? And I'm wondering if you're hearing that. We like the characters, but we don't know whether the story's been told, their whole story's been told yet.
I hear that with almost all my books.
Oh, do you?
And
okay.
What I took that in a good way, because I'd never like to have a tie up all the loose ends at the end of a book, at the end of a story. I think the only way you can do that is, well, one of my characters says all our stories in at the graveyard, you know. But who knows, you know, who knows where these folks are going. Right now, my story's ended, this is where they are. And I like to do it that way. So, yeah, it kind of, I don't intend to do a sequel for any of the books, but certainly can leave that open to possibilities.
I talked with one author that said it gets very dangerous because later on people will come up and go, well, in your third book you did such and such, and you go, oh, I forgot. So you have to keep track of everything, because your readers really nail you down and go, no, they couldn't have done that because they didn't do this in the other book or something.
Makes
so
sense.
There would be some pressure on you for that. I wanted to shift a little bit because you put out this wonderful little book that I think is just a perfect timing for right now. It's called The Same Sweet Girl's Guide to Life. Now, one of your books is titled The Same Sweet Girls. Yes. So do you want to explain about how this came about?
Yes. The Same Sweet Girls is my third novel, and I wrote it. I had been wanting to write this for a long time because I belong to a group of women friends that we met in college, and we started calling ourselves the Same Sweet Girls based on something that happened one day in a convocation. And so we have been the Same Sweet Girls ever since college, and that's several decades ago now. So I wanted to take our stories and fictionalize them, which they're highly fictionalized in the Same Sweet Girls. But one thing I had in the book was one of the characters, kind of like I do. I also keep a notebook with what I call just life lessons in it, you know, and just jot down. I hear a saying I like or have an insight or something like that, I'll jot it down. So when I was asked to give a commencement speech at my alma mater, I made it more like the Same Sweet Girls Guide to Life, because that's where the Same Sweet Girls had started. And I wanted to share with the graduating class our experience and some of the things, you know, that
life lessons learned.
About life I had learned since my graduation, and that became then the basis for this book, The Same Sweet Girls Guide to Life.
And so the commencement address is in here, and also some other notes and ideas that you had along the way. Well, anyway, that's just come out too, so people can be looking for that. Do you read your books out loud for your dialogue, or is it in your head?
It's in my head, yeah. You know, writers are weird anyway. We hear voices and we talk to ourselves and so forth. So, yeah, I've heard some writers that read it aloud. I think that's a good idea, but I haven't done that yet.
Now, this Moonrise, I think, was the first book that had an audiobook with it. Is that right?
No, all of my books have had.
Yeah. So this one has 3 different narrators with Moonrise. Is that something that you like instead of having just one reader?
Yeah, but Making Waves was the first one that they used different actors to read the parts, and when they sent me that, I was pleasantly surprised, you know, for that. But though I used different narrators in The Same Sweet Girls, they use the same voice, I believe.
So you're comfortable,
so,
but you don't have any control over.
I have none whatsoever.
Once it goes out into the air, you have to trust other people.
You just have to. You just sell the rights for the audio rights.
So what's the next thing that Cassandra King is going to be doing?
Well, just making up my mind as to what my next project's going to be. I've already started a book that has as sort of a background story the development of Panama City in the early 60s. That one, I've done enough work on that it might be next, but I also want to write about being raised on a family farm and how that's a disappearing landscape. And I want to write a cookbook, so I've got several projects
now that
going.
Just tweaked my interest too. So we will look forward to seeing what your next adventure will be. How about it? We'll do it like that.
Sounds
I was going to leave people with a couple quotes that I liked in the book.
Okay.
It'll either work out or it won't. I love that. Did you put that in this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And
girls.
Any landing you walk away from is a good landing.
That's one of my favorite sayings.
I love that.
That is absolutely. I had a therapist friend that used to say that, and I told myself that a million times, because if you're able to get up and brush yourself off and walk off, then you've survived.
And there's something about a Southern woman that knows how to pick herself up and brush herself off better. Well, I really appreciate you coming in today, and I hope that you get a chance to meet a lot of the people out at the Bookfest. And I'll look forward to seeing what your next project is.
Thank you, Rita.
Thank you, Cassandra King. And that's the 6th annual Bookfest from Blue Ridge. Thank you.